We'll begin our meeting of the Village of North Bennington Board of Trustees for Tuesday, November 12, 2013. First will be a review and approval of the minutes of the October 8 meeting.
I'll move we accept them as printed.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Easy enough.
I abstain.
You abstain. One abstention, hasn't been here. And the warrant and approval of the payment of the bills. Now, with respect to that number at the bottom of the page, it is my recommendation that what was to happen with all of this was that we were going to basically get 3 bills. We really got 2, and so that number is not only a number we have to deal with from the standpoint of its size, because there are issues that we'll have to negotiate with the water board and some of the issues they had. But second, before all of that is resolved, I would recommend that we pay half of it, which is about what we would have had anticipated getting the bill for.
So do we need to change the warrant then before we approve it? Or do we need to have a
we can amend
discussion
it.
before we do it?
We need to talk.
Exactly.
And because I don't think we can put an amount on that until we talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we need to hold that. You want to hold that entire sum until we
Yes.
and we've had some executive session work too,
Right.
because of the legal aspect. So I guess I'd be looking for a motion to accept the warrant minus the Del Signor invoice.
I have some other questions, Matt. There's a couple from Trudell.
Yeah,
Are those bills we should be paying?
yeah.
And there's another one to add.
What these bills are, Dave, is pretty much the payment to Jim Sharp and our other main guy there, Jim's boss.
Right.
Pat, and it's all part of that thing. They submit separately. Now, what happened last month was that the bill we paid was substantially more than what we owed actually on that phase of the project, which is another reason to wait till it's all figured out before we do it. And that's because they failed to take out the work that the valve purchases that the water department purchased on their own. And Del Signor didn't take those out, as I understand it, so that 111 or whatever it was actually more than like 80, 85 or something. But the smoke hasn't cleared on any of this, and so I think we just need to, as you said, wait on that. But I think those are insignificant enough, and Gail can counter that if she thinks we need to, but that we can do that. We can afford that.
A couple other ones down towards the bottom of the first page. You've got SD Arlen Ferguson for Bank Street. Those look like the same numbers that we had for the other grant. Is that?
SD Ireland is for Park Street.
Okay,
Culverts for Park.
right. What about Ferguson?
Ferguson was Park Street too.
Okay.
Right. And let's see, what else do we have here? Fort Miller, that was another Park Street, right?
Yes.
Who is Hardigan?
Yes, I wanted to know that too.
Is Matt Moore's things?
Where's that?
There's a couple of Hardigans.
Yeah.
3 of them, I think. One on the next page too.
Yeah, there was
Who's Hardigan?
Cardigan is the people that came in and sucked the DIs.
Okay.
Okay.
And there's 3 separate invoices for them. Why is that?
Question, Lori, on, they just bill by day. That's just how they
Okay.
do it.
And does that look right to you, Norm?
Yeah.
After having given up 1 day of the use of the machine?
Well, we have to bill for one.
We have to bill for that? Okay,
That's right.
okay.
And M&8 Foxfire?
That's fire department?
Oh, okay.
And that check that was made out to me for 135, that's also on a grant. That's the inventory of all our culverts grant. And that's a camera that they wanted us to buy to take pictures.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a question. What would you like to do with this?
Oh, wait, who's it from?
It's from Staff Sterling, and it's for $23,246.02.
For what component of the,
That's the inspectors. That's why Trudell is strictly engineering. That's why,
oh, Trudell, thank you.
Right, yeah.
That's right. I got those mixed up.
Staff Sterling is the,
I would like you to look at the invoices from Trudell. Do you have them?
I do.
there's 2, right?
At least.
About mid-page here.
I'm sorry, I inverted those 2 groups in my mind.
I just see 2 of them.
Yeah, there's 2. Let me, well, I'll wait till she can tell me what she's got there. I don't think we're in a position to be paying them anyway. We can just deal with that and then deal with it in the legal.
These are the same guys that we had the issue with.
They're the engineers.
All right, so we should pull that and talk about that
Yeah.
probably.
Where to find that so I don't confuse her. I'm sorry, Lori.
It's okay,
Put
I'm
you
sure
through it.
it'll be the last one.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are hard again. That's not what we're looking for.
Calculator. Nah, this is not. This makes it look like you're doing something right.
There's one. Give that to Matt.
The dates. This is way back. This is part of that invoice we told them we weren't gonna pay.
What was the grand total?
Redrafting. Well, they did some redrafting for the sake of, what do we got here? 9/17 to 9/27.
I think we need to hold all of
Yeah.
these.
So, and for the sake of the audience, I don't want this to be a mystery. There was some major mistakes made with regard to this project, and so we are likely going to be in negotiations or litigation with the engineers of this project. Hopefully not litigation, hopefully we can work this out, but, so I don't think we want to pay any more of those bills. So let me start over. Pull all True Del and pull Del Signor. And add the staff Sterling.
So is the staff sterling not on this?
It's not on there.
How much is that one?
Do you have the amount?
23,246 and 2 cents.
23,246.02.
And what if we subtract it out? Obviously, the big,
We've got
Well, we're
the
going to
four.
have to.
we got a
do something
calculator.
here.
Yeah.
You want the numbers?
Should be like, okay, it should be around 78,996.84.
You want the numbers?
Yeah, why don't you give me first? Well,
Say
here.
the original total
5,183,42.
26.
Okay, minus.
Minus the Del Signor is 457, 500.
Wait, 457, just 457.
457,500,
500, yeah,
69 cents.
okay. Now subtract out
Subtract out the
Trudel's.
Trudels. One Trudel was 2,496 and 25. And the other 2,694.50.
So we're approving a warrant tonight for 55,650.82
Plus Trudel.
plus Trudel.
Not Trudel.
Or excuse me,
Plus staff
staff
Sterling.
Sterling.
And that number is how much?
2,496.
No, it's
No.
23,000.
23,000, sorry. 23,246.
246. We're asking for approval of the warrant for 78,896.84.
Okay, so moved?
Say that again, Matthew.
78,896.84 cents.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So everybody understands, this is part of a major grant project, which we will be receiving
80% of it back,
80% of the project, but up to $364,000.
up to $384.
So these numbers are big, but we'll be getting some big ones back.
I wanted, we need to circulate yours, I didn't keep notes.
Oh, sorry. Circulating my mess there. So I was counting on you to. I'll move on to the Windcoat Foundation for the Fire Department. Approval of a Radio North invoice for $4,520.
I move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You got that one?
I got this one.
Okay. That'll make no sense. And the payroll warrant for October, $5,579.47.
I'll move we approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
We've come to citizen comments. Where do we want to start? I suspect a lot of you are here about the intersection. I think I would like to have this discussion, which was kind of a continuation from last month, and hopefully deal with that readily, and then move on to that, if that's okay. Last month, an issue was brought to us regarding burning by Ed Corey and by the neighbors, and the neighbors are concerned about the safety of that burning. And that's Chris and Doreen Damon, and I don't know where you've gotten with this in a month about this, but I know that she has done extensive research and has talked with, I think, all of you, at least with Ed and the state, and with Doucette, the fire chief, and the fire person at the state level. So I'm going to let Janice kind of explain what we found out.
Well, I did talk with a lot of people, and I did some notes about my conversations, but late this afternoon, I received a letter from Lars Lund, who is the state forest fire supervisor, and we had talked about him last time as a resource for resolving this. And he sent a very detailed letter about his activity and his recommendations. I haven't had an opportunity to send this out. As I said, it just came in late this afternoon. So while I can attempt to summarize it some, I wouldn't want us to, there's some action items here that I think the trustees need to deal with. So why don't I try to summarize how I see it at this point and what still needs to be done. Well, first, I think it was, I really appreciate the use of Mr. Lund as a resource. Ed Corey called him, engaged with him, and asked him to come down, or he agreed to come down, to look personally at the situation. So he did that. And he's based in Rutland, I think, correct on that. So, and then I talked with him both before and after his visit here. There were a number of things that he identified. One is that when he looked at the materials that were to be burned, he found that they met requirements. But he, in terms of the type of materials that they were, he had a number of recommendations in terms of how to go about doing the burning, everything from being aware of the direction of the wind, making sure that the fires were well supervised, that there was water available. But then he also talked with you, Maureen, right? And heard about your concerns about whether the burning itself was in conflict with the town bylaws, or the zoning bylaws, actually. And he read through those, and he found them confusing. The bylaw in question, let me see if I can, had to, let's see. It was titled Inoperative Motor Vehicles, Scrap and Waste Materials. And the part that seemed to deal with this was that talked about no scrap or waste materials not originating on the premises being burned or being disposed of. And but he couldn't find in the bylaws any definition of what scrap or waste material was. So he said it seemed seemed like it might have application, but it wasn't clear exactly what the bylaw was referring to. So one of his recommendations was that the trustees take a look at that and clarify what it means. Meanwhile, I also spoke with Dan Taub this afternoon to try to get an idea of if he had some sense of what that referred to, since it is a zoning bylaw. And he said he could understand why well, I guess it's ambiguous about what it refers to and that it may apply in this instance. And so until that's clarified, it didn't seem like we could move forward. Now, the other piece that I just learned about coming to the meeting today is that apparently excuse me for being a little scattered here, but it also refers you to the town ordinance, the village ordinance. And we've struggled some to get a copy of that ordinance, but Matthew, in looking through his records.
Do you have it?
Oh,
I
maybe
can't seem to find it.
Yeah,
Where it is.
probably. Yes. Came up with one that was a draft proposal. It's not clear whether it went through approval or not. It was some years back that put some very stringent requirements on what could be burned. And it seemed like here in the village, which is refers to Vermont state statutes as well. So until we really have a chance to read through this and to determine whether this was enacted or not, I think it's difficult to make a decision on this.
Did you received you found, ultimately, I heard, a copy of them through the town of Bennington?
I have the town.
You have the town ordinance?
Yeah,
Okay.
but that's different than what
Yeah.
this one is, Chris.
What this information suggests is that the board, as I knew was the case, had ordinances with respect to this that are different than the town of Bennington. More restrictive, actually. And so, and I know on a CD, when this was done, was it '06?
Yes, right.
Bob McWaters was on the board, and he was putting that all together and making the revisions, and in the end, after our adoption, created a CD of all of the documents that we were dealing with. And that's what I have to find.
And
I don't have a copy of that to give you, but you can read it if you want a sense of what, and again,
Right.
from a legal standpoint, it's a draft. I believe very strongly that's what got adopted, because as I recall, there wasn't an issue with that particular part of the zoning.
I'd like to get a copy of it eventually.
Yeah,
well, we
I want
want
to
to
get
make
you a
sure
copy of the
that
real
it's-
one. I want to make sure that
Yes,
we...
right, because this is only a draft. It starts by saying open burning is prohibited within the village boundaries, and then it lists a few exceptions. And, but if that indeed was enacted, it is much more restrictive than the town of Bennington,
What
which,
about your fire code itself, the actual burning permit?
This references that.
That's what that pertains to.
Can I...
right, yeah.
Article 0507, open burning. Vermont state statutes forbids open barrel burning anywhere. That's trash, which is different than what Mr. Corey's dealing with. Open burning is prohibited within the village boundaries. Open burning of the following types may be permitted in compliance with fire department guidelines with a valid open burning permit from the village fire department. Items 1 through 5 shall be under the supervision and/or observation of the fire department at all times. And by that, meaning that you've called them and notified them, not necessarily that they're there, because I don't think you necessarily would want them at your bonfire, your ceremonial bonfire necessarily, or whatever. Although, when we burn for the Halloween parade every year down at the Arts Exchange, the fire department is right there, because it's a big burn. So ceremonial or controlled bonfires, ceremonial controlled may be permitted. Disaster rubbish, the open burning of rubbish, including landscape waste, may be permitted for the duration of the disaster in case where an officially declared emergency exists. Prescribed agricultural burns for fields and the like. Training fires, fires set for the purpose of bona fide instruction, and flare stacks, opening, burning, or flaring of waste gas may be permitted. Open burning for campfires and outdoor cooking is permitted without any burning permit if performed in an approved container constructed of steel, brick, or masonry. That's the extent of that bylaw. I'm not going to interpret it legally. That's up for, but it sounds to me pretty restrictive. But one could argue that when they are referring to open burning, they are referring to trash. It's possible that's what the reference is. Again, I didn't write this. I don't think anybody at this table wrote this. And it's probably a vestigial part of when they first started having ordinances. And so I think what I have on that CD is actually kind of an interesting historical progression of all of the ordinances that Bob had access to. So we'll work on getting that.
Do you have a time frame for?
I can do that soon. I have to, my problem is my CD drive doesn't work here anymore, and my one at home is intermittent. But if I find the CD, I'd be happy to lend it to you, and you could download the whole thing.
Yeah, I just think it's important that if the fire marshal are issuing burning permits, they know what they're issuing a permit to burn. And if
And
somebody
actually,
thinks they're piling up something the size of that chair to get rid of the twigs and limbs, that's different than piling something up the size of a small garage and lighting it on fire.
I agree.
So if these ordinances that Dan Tull, and I asked him to be here tonight, apparently he's not, has access to and is in charge of enforcing, if he doesn't understand what's in these and the words are ambiguous, then that needs to be defined.
Yeah.
So that when the voting public vote on these, we know what we're voting for. And the one thing I ask is if you're considering all this is that you take into account that 20 years ago there were not residents in that area. Now there are residents in that area. And the residents should take priority over non-residents when it comes to issues like this. Owning property does not make you a resident. We are residents of that area, but that area is being used as a stump dump and a construction equipment storage area. It's not being used as a residence, and it's a residential area.
Yeah. That's actually raised a good point. Because, first of all, I think Dan decided that, and I think he's correct, and actually Jim Sullivan might know the answer to this as the BCRC guy, but Dan's job as zoning administrator, he does not enforce ordinances at all. Ordinances are to be enforced by law enforcement officers or other people appointed by the trustees to do so. Zoning issues, and I believe there may be some in this case, would be something that Dan would deal with. And that has to do with storage of equipment. This may not have to do with the fire, but it has to do with other issues related to that property.
Well, actually, the ordinance you were referring to that I think you shared is in the zoning ordinances. I mean, it's in bylaws, yeah.
Okay. Then that would be something that we would ask him to be a part of, for sure.
And that's why I asked him to be here. Because when I'm reading this, it says you cannot bring in material or dispose of material that doesn't originate on the property.
And we all agree with that.
If that isn't clear, then it needs to be made clear.
No, I think the state agrees with that. I think Mr. Corey even agrees with that.
Now, when I talked with Dan, he said the way it was listed as an ordinance, his first read on that was that had to do scrap and waste, which are the words that are used, might not have to do with brush. The intent.
It says material.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Welcome to Vermont.
Find it.
Yeah.
But as I said, I just hope when you're reviewing this, you take into account the residents that are in that area, that actually live there. And we do have another complaint that we issued with Dan, and we were hoping you'd be here tonight to tell us where that is.
Okay.
But
I can say just keep calling him. I don't see much of him these days, so I don't really know where, but it's not his full-time job. So just keep at him, because it is his requirement to issue a finding on that situation. So what's next?
So I would suggest first that I forward, well, two things. One is I forward the letter from Lars Lund to the rest of the board so that you can see what his process was, its findings, and the issues he had. But it seems even more important, equally important, that we establish where these ordinances stand. If they're in effect, then that raises issues somewhat around how they coincide with the town of Bennington's and enforcement. And that's something else we've all as a board been looking into, and I had an update on that too.
Do you want to update us on that part? This is with Doucette or with?
Yeah.
What?
Well, I've had several conversations with Paul Doucette, and I know that Mark had as well, and Jamie, I think, before you, about the Bennington's police enforcement of North Bennington's ordinances, since they're our police force. We don't have any independent of that. And Bennington has taken the position that, well, first, Chief Doucette told me that the courts have become more and more particular about the basis for filing a complaint against an ordinance. And so Bennington has taken a position that they will enforce ordinances that are in alignment with Bennington ordinances. So, and I think we've had this discussion before too, and there's been some attempt to align the North Bennington ordinances with the Bennington ones.
We've gotten a lot of mixed messages very clearly about that over the years from the town manager, zoning administrator, and chief of police, in that sometimes it's, if you adopt an ordinance that is in alignment with Bennington, they will enforce it. The next time it is, if you adopt all of our ordinances, we will enforce it.
Chief Doucette did tell me that his feeling on that was that we didn't have to adopt all of Bennington's, but that they would enforce the ones that coincided.
That's the first time
with
I've heard that nuance, and I
Yeah.
actually appreciate that.
So I received a copy of all 870-some pages of Bennington's ordinances to try to take a look at them and do some comparison with what North Bennington has, and I've not been able to get a complete copy of North Bennington. So that's why I was anxious to do that.
Well, the ordinances are online, you just have to download.
Well, the zoning ones are, but there are a whole set of other ones that are beyond the zoning ones.
The bylaws.
The
No,
Well, they should be.
they should be.
They should be.
But they're not, that has not been put in the hands, as I understand it, with the person who puts it online. So we need to track down that document. But over the years, we have adopted verbatim, right here, a number of Bennington ordinances for the sake of this issue of clarity. It's had to do with dogs. We've done it, I think, 3 times. Noise. And then a copy of that has been given to the town of Bennington. And yet there's, I think, almost every time someone goes over there to ask, they say, well, we don't have a copy.
Well, Chief Doucette did have a copy of the traffic ordinances. He gave that back to
Okay.
me. So he did have those, and, but I don't have any of the other ones through him. And he is more than willing to come to a trustees meeting and hold this discussion, too, about how this would all work. But it feels like we need to do some things
Right.
ourselves in terms of, oh, and let me just say, when I looked at the traffic ordinances, and I did compare that piece, they look pretty similar. The language isn't exactly the same, and there certainly would be differences in terms of the particulars, like which streets were one way, which ones, where the speed limits were. Those types of things have to be specific to each municipality. But it felt like there was, I guess that's one of the questions I would have for him. It may not be verbatim, but it looks like the intent is a good match. But some of the others, well, I was looking at the sign ordinance, for instance, which is on the website. I believe that it's called an ordinance, but it's one that sort of falls under zoning as well.
It's enforced by the DRB,
Right,
so.
right, and it isn't in an alignment, it's different. And so we may be fine with that because it's being enforced within the village, but, so I'm anxious to look at the other ones and just see.
So as you can see, what we really have here is a real cluster of issues that have happened in an additive sort of way over the last 100 and many years, and it is a mess. Everybody's aware of that.
No, this whole history about the, and Matthew and I joined the board at the same time, and one of the first things, we got into issues like this, saying we got ordinances, but we have no way of enforcing them. So we tried to work with the town, because that would be the only, they are our police force, and we went so far, we had several meetings, we went so far as saying, we will adopt all of Bennington's ordinances, so that now at least we have something we can enforce. And then the answer back to that was, well, the police department is too busy, so they can't, even if you adopt all of ours, we can't enforce them for you. So, I mean, that's...
We've been jerked around.
We've been
quite a bit.
jerked around, and I have to say, this is the best relationship we've had since I've been on the board. At least we're at a position where we're talking about it. Before, it was just out and out. You cannot have any police protection. And, you know...
And that pretty much used to be the case.
And they said, you don't have enough crime in North
That
Bennington.
we were paying a lot of money for police protection, and they said, well, we've got to put the money...
Because our taxes
towards
do
the-
go towards financing the police department.
They've come a long way with that. Their presence in the community is
Right.
much greater. So I think this is something we can work out, but it's figuring out, what that came down to wasn't so much the police time, but the town manager decided that it would be too much work for his department, the town offices, to deal with health inspections, the things that we should be given that service for because we pay for it. But it was made clear that that wasn't going to happen. But that's even gotten a little bit better because
Yeah,
we've had
no,
some help.
it all has
We've had some
improved.
help from,
I mean, we got to the position where we hired the sheriff to do some police protection because the Bennington police totally refused to even step foot in the village. I mean, the whole thing is much, much better now. So I'm hopeful this is another instance that hopefully working together will get a little bit closer.
but to bring this back down to the focus of burning, I don't know where we stand with respect to, I mean, before we found this document, which again is not an actionable document, it was pretty much the understanding because of that fellow's inspection that he can burn under the right conditions with permission of the fire chief. And at the time, my request was going to be that the fire chief or one of his people be there to watch how it's done, to verify, because of it's a neighborhood, what direction the wind's blowing, things like this. It's not an impulsive thing, and as recommended by the state, that the periodicity of the permit is not just a, here's your permit, you can burn for 4 months. Every burn has to get a permit.
But basically, what you're describing is a stump dump. You can bring stuff in, pile it up, and burn it, so this can go on forever.
Well,
That's not the spirit of what burning permit's for.
and I agree with that. So that gets us to that other part, is whether or not he is in compliance with the ambiguous, and so I think that, what is Bennington's much better? You have a copy of it?
Bennington has a very brief
I don't have any.
one that I saw with, embedded in their ordinances. I forget which one it's under. And there may be more than that, and I don't have it.
Jim, I know that we contract with you and your organization to do rewrites of zoning bylaws and town plans. Do you ever work with municipalities with regard to their crazy ordinances?
I've done a few. I've done noise ordinance and may have in the distant past done a junk car ordinance or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
It might be something we should look at creating a cohesive document from, again. I don't know where we're at.
Well, I think we have to find out if that document ever passed. I think we need to find the baseline right now. What's the actual ordinance right now? Because even if we can't even have the police determine whether what you're doing is fine or not, because we can't define what is right or wrong.
And what Dan did tell me, though, is that he, in reading through things and talking about it, he thought that the zoning ordinance didn't support this type of burning. Where you'd bring in materials from off-site.
I think we all understood that. His claim was that he wasn't doing that, I thought.
Well, no, I think, no.
It's been witnessed that it was
I
brought.
bring it in from, I own other properties,
Okay.
and I do bring it in from other properties that I own.
I would, just a suggestion here, but in trying to get along with one's neighbors, maybe one burns the things that are on their own property at the properties in which
Okay,
they
now,
are.
the two questions I have with that,
Yep.
I don't have, is, I have cleared, down through the town right away, and, there was a large limb down there besides some brush, and I brought that down. My question is all right to burn that?
Well, see, there's nuance with that, Ed, and I agree that, yes, I would say that that's helping out your neighbors by getting the road open along Corey Drive. But then, as you recall, there was the time when there was cutting done that ended up in legal action because it wasn't on your property. So the nuance is, if something falls onto the road, I think that they would be happy to see it taken care of, and it's not going to mean a huge amount of material.
Okay, and then my other question is, if I do get a load of logs, cut up into firewood length, there is material left from them that I usually burn.
Doesn't originate on the property, it can't be burned on the property.
Well, I think the state might take a different view on that one, and I think they
And
actually
as I say,
did.
those are just questions, I'm not trying to do anything wrong,
Yeah.
I'm trying to do,
No, Ed, I've appreciated the way you've gone forth with this, and you've been trying to find some answers, you've talked to the people. I think anybody in this community has the right to cut up a cord of wood, and what they can't cut up, the bark or whatever that falls up, I think they can burn it on their property. But again, it all has to do with working it out with your neighbors. I mean, I wouldn't do that without letting my neighbors know that there's gonna be a fire. And,
Well, again, I think you need to define fire. Is it something the size of that chair or something the size of a small garage?
right,
It's an awful lot of debris and it's an awful lot of soot, cinders, ashes,
Yeah.
and smoke that we're tolerating not once every 5 years, but 5 times a year. So we're the residents there. These gentlemen are not residents there. I think it should fall to the residents, not to the non-residents. Because if you have property and you're dragging stuff into it, you're creating a stump dump.
Well,
You're not a resident burning limbs and twigs.
and I think that sounds logical, but it's not the way it currently that's getting some pretty complicated nuance with writing a thing about, with respect to who lives in what house and what, I just really don't understand why people can't figure this out and get along. Because it's really it's hinging very closely on a civil issue between two parties, where, yes, we want to clarify as much as we can, and we've done what we can to help get the state's view. We will see what the Bennington thing does, and see what we can find with this. There's still gonna be ambiguity. If I find this document with the same words in it, it's gonna be an issue of definitions, and that's the kind of thing that's gonna end up in a civil dispute in the courts.
I just think if you have ordinances that you're presenting to the state and having the voters approve, you need to know what is in there. The residents need to know what's in there. Because when I pick this up, I think I'm being protected by ordinances. When someone else picks it up, they think they can do whatever they want to do. And we're not getting any definition where it's like, well, if you don't want to burn, don't burn. If you want to burn anything you want to, that's okay too. There's got to be something that we can fall back on and say, this is written and this has to be followed. And right now, it's not.
Does anybody, there's quite a good brain trust in here of people who have been on this board or have perspectives. I'd love to hear what we're supposed to do.
I just wanted to read this little bit that Mr. Lund,
Yep.
in terms of his description here. What he says is on site with several small piles of brush, branches, and hedge trimmings that Mr. Corey wanted to burn. These small piles were resting on tarps and large pieces of plastic. All the materials on site, with the exception of the plastics, were legal to burn. So I don't know the definition of small, and he was looking at it as a point in time, what was happening at,
Sure.
That, and there may be some history here too, but
And I think that gets into the question of reasonable and safe. And so if the pile's so big that there are lit embers landing on your roof or your deck, I would call that not safe. And for that reason, I would say that is not a legal burn.
That's what's happening.
And if he needs to, if that's one of the issues, then he needs to burn in such a way that doesn't happen, which either means burning smaller piles, making sure that the wind is going out over Lake Perrin instead of over your house, things like this. It's common sense, I guess.
That's not being done either.
Right.
I have tried, that's why I try to burn more often, rather than wait for the pile to get huge.
Yep.
Well, where does the pile come from? It's getting huge.
And I realize we're taking up your time, but.
We got a lot of issues.
Make copies of the one for everybody.
oh, okay.
So up to this point, though, you did say that you were bringing in materials from other places?
Some of it is,
Okay.
but it's all my own property. It's
Right.
all property I own.
Okay, no, I understand that, but, so moving forward, part of the agreement could be, couldn't you just eliminate bringing those to that site and burn the materials at the site that they were taken from, even though you own both
I think
properties?
that in the spirit of the bylaw would suggest that you're not to bring stuff from other properties, whether you own them or not.
Yeah.
So burn,
Then it's down to just the wood issue, or, you know.
then it's down to the wood issue. And I don't believe I'm the arbitrator of this, but I personally
I've
would
got
feel
one
that
in.
you can burn.
Oh, no, it's got the other one.
Oh, it does, okay.
Landfill.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like the biggest bone of contention is that you're bringing things from off-site. If that were to stop, the piles wouldn't get to the point where they are now, and I'm sure your neighbors would be fine with you burning
Yeah,
whatever
I
is.
can burn
Is that accurate?
what's generated on my own property.
With a permit, well, as long as he's not bringing things
With the
off.
permit for the specific burn and when the conditions, based on the opinion of the fire chief, are appropriate for burning.
Staying
Yeah.
there, not just burn and then take off.
I
Yes,
think the
well,
fire needs to
he-
be attended.
Yeah, well, there were,
But this last one,
And I've
he
never
wasn't
left it
there.
unattended.
He took
My
off.
son's been there.
He took off and was bringing more stuff in.
Right.
Because I stood right there and watched him do it.
Well, I hope that
Oh,
stops.
my son is there, you know.
your
He's not-
son
he
was
just
with
came
you.
over.
Noreen, did you get a copy of Laura's letter?
No,
Yeah, okay, why don't
but they
I,
talked to him also.
right, because he, I think, addressed the supervision issue and the safety concerns, the wind. He was pretty thorough in his report, so let me just give you a copy of it.
And I think the fact that he has advised you to notify the North Bennington Fire Department if he observes unattended fire or the absence of a means of controlling that fire, water.
And we will be doing that.
Well,
Yep.
then you know who to call.
Yep, good lawyers.
And he'll be informed that there's no more issuing of burn permits that he
Yes,
carries
he
in
knows
his pot,
that,
right,
too, yeah.
for 3 months. We do it with this at where I live, or we're at the farm. Anytime we're burning something, we call up Shasberry's fire warden. And sometimes they say fine, sometimes say, you know what, it's a little dry out, why don't you wait?
No, and Ed Myers has said that to me before, even
Yep.
though I've had, a permit to burn, he has, definitely chosen days and said,
Yeah.
no, you can't burn weekends and
Okay, well, I think that's.
everything like that, so I have tried.
And I know that Oliver, at least, makes, there's a notation of that call. It's, okay, they called, I wrote it down, I'm aware that there's a log that says that that particular burn was permitted. Now, I would also expect that he would make a phone call to you and let you know that he intends to do that. And then it's your job to, if you feel like it's not in compliance with safety, or these other, unattended, or this and that, pick up the phone. Fire department will get tired of, they won't get tired of you, they'll get tired of making the call, to the degree where they'll be probably even a little more careful
Well,
about.
we were told by Ed after the last fire that no more permits would be issued for that lot. So now I'm being told that
Well,
more permits issued for that lot. Now I'm getting a different story.
I would go with that. Until I found this, I think that was what the state basically was saying, that he can, that a given, meeting the concerns of the state guy in absence of any clarity here, that could happen. I would ask, wait till there's snow on the ground. Wait till it's rained a significant, I don't think we're the arbitrators of this, other than that clearly there needs to be some changes to this. And you had said that you spent a lot of time on zoning and maybe this is something in your retirement you'd want to take on.
Can't enforce them, why would I want to do that?
Well,
Wow, yeah. We're working on that, too.
And you're having a meeting in December.
we'll have a meeting in December. I don't think there's real clarity here, but I think that should you decide that you want to burn, I want Ed, and I will notify Ed that I want him to go to your site and to verify that everything meets his concerns. And then it'll be up to him whether to issue a permit, as it always has been. But I think
So you are saying that if Ed does come to the site, he could issue a permit? That would be up to him.
it really is. It
I don't
really
think
is
we
up
have,
to
we
him.
don't have the right to tell him who he can and who he can't issue a permit to, because we do allow burn permits.
Right.
So we can't tell him who he can't, he's the
He may say
fire
no.
chief, he's the one who has to make those determinations based on safety.
He may take into account past behavior or whatever, but that's up to him. He's the guy who makes those calls. And if the issues still are something that you cannot live with, that's when you two end up in a civil dispute about it. And that's where you end up in a court, and somebody's going to interpret whether or not these really horrible bylaws are, as written, are what they mean.
I'm very new to this issue, but it seems that there might be a question that you have with the proper enforcement of the zoning regulations.
Yes.
So if that's the case, I would suggest, I work for the Regional Planning Commission, I'm also on the Development Review Board in the village. I suggest that you ask for a written decision from the zoning administrator.
I have, and I've never gotten it.
Okay, well, talk to you about that too, about what the implications of that are. But in decision of the zoning administrator, and that decision could be that, you know, he doesn't think he has to take any action, but he should write that down. And then you can appeal that. The proper appeal is to the Development Review Board for a zoning issue. Says you should, because, you know, the select board is kind of 2 levels beyond that.
Well, the reason that I've come to this meeting to discuss it is I've called Dan over the last 4 years, several issues there. And now he's saying that he doesn't have a recollection. Remember me talking to him about it.
Well,
So I want to get this on record. I want to know what the finding of fact was. I want to know what was turned in. I want to know what was
just to
determined.
clarify, Jim's point is that only the part in the zoning bylaw, whereas that one reference, right? There's one, is the part that you guys can act on. You can't act on the ordinance
We'd act on an appeal of the zoning administrator's
decision, right?
So, you know, we need a written decision, and so, and I don't know if you've given him a written request for a decision, but it'd be best to have the whole.
I have, and over the last 4 years. We have another issue out there with lighting. I had him come out 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything from him since.
Send him a registered letter.
If it's any consolation, when I spoke with him about the burning, he said he knows there's this other one too, and he's, says he'll be on it. I don't know. I mean, he acknowledges that he knows it's out there.
I guess I need to know where to go to discuss these issues, so it'll be a matter of record, so I can get a finding of fact, so I can get whatever I need to go.
I think Jim just laid that out, that you should write a letter to, a physical letter that you can prove was sent to him, asking for his opinion on this. If it's not what you like, then you file another letter, which is a formal complaint or a request for.
Should be a form, an appeal form.
Is there one? Maybe on the
The forms are on the website.
Fund for North Bennington?
And that goes to the DRB, if he doesn't like
Yeah.
Well, there's
to
supposed to
appeal
be
the
an
decision.
administrative officer who handles these, and I don't know who.
Well, see, there used to be, planning and zoning has kind of turned into this DRB thing, and they really are the enforcement officer of appeal.
Yeah, the DRB does what the zoning board used to do.
Right.
But it starts with the decision of the zoning administrator. You gotta get that.
Come back next month if you haven't gotten any traction. I will certainly try to contact Dan with regard to this and express the importance of it
And I think
being addressed.
He said he was going to be in touch with you, Matthew.
Okay.
As far as the general ordinances, I think if we can get our hands on a copy, then I'd be glad to invite Chief Doucette to join us. It seems like we need to know what we're talking about before we invite him to do that, so.
So right here it says that there is a form, request to zoning administrator for letter regarding compliance, a Bianchi letter, which I would think is what you need. You're asking him to say. Okay, we got a lot of stuff to do.
Thank you for your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if we got anywhere with that, but nowhere to go. Other citizen comments? Art?
Yeah. Other, Brian Mack from Dailies. I'm just concerned about the intersection, how trucks can safely, legally and safely go around the corners without doing damage to tire suspension and so on and so forth. I've got some pictures I'd like to share with you of trucks. I've got 4 copies. I don't know when somebody would like to share. one morning, my truck left and came down past Evans. He feels he has to cross over the center line.
He most definitely does.
In the corner, which is illegal. Couldn't stage more perfectly, but in the third picture, you'll see a truck coming the other way. He had to stop by the parsonage. There's just no way that the two trucks could have continued on, so he had to stop way back there before my truck came in the corner.
Let's go back to the history on this, because you were involved with this back many years ago. You came and addressed your concerns about the plans that were being done. This is 10 years ago or more, when it was getting started. And one of your concerns was that what you were going to lose at that time was the white stripes by the bank that you could drive over and stay in, and so you had the turn. Your concern specifically actually led the state to review the applicability of this plan and did numerous radius studies and everything. In that design that's out there right now, all of that red is for you to drive on. And as I see here, they're not. And
They don't drive on it.
Well,
This guy- these-
Can I
Go ahead,
answer that?
please.
Okay. First of all, I talked with Mr. Tetra, or who put in this.
Tetra.
Steve Tetra, yes. He's put in these before. He's never put in one that didn't have a beveled concrete.
Yeah.
The concrete is not beveled. That's our
I mean,
concern.
the granite, the granite.
The granite is not, now, at the very first part of that, it is flush. But when you start coming around the corner, I've got a picture of it. It's
The
about
design was for 3 inches.
3 inches. That 3 inches comes right up on the tire, right in the area that can damage it. And if the driver doesn't judge it right, he's got a 7 or 8 inch curve. And if you notice on some of these pictures, there's black marks all over it. It's only been a week.
Well, considering there's over 1,000 vehicles that we found out go through here a day, and a lot of them are trucks, it doesn't surprise me that there's going to be, this is a very, let's go back to why this was done. And again, none of us, Dave and I came onto the board as this project had already been planned. We've carried it out because it's been the will of many people in the community to create a more pedestrian-friendly intersection and to slow traffic down. I've seen trucks have to stop because there's a car in that lane. Now, I don't know about the legality of going into that other lane. I could see that's an issue, but I will remind you that the state approved these plans. They did not give us a grant for $400,000.
Went through 6 times it had to be approved.
We're talking Department of Transportation, AOT.
Is it not true that they really didn't like the idea of doing away with bringing Collins in? Somebody on the board at that time said he remembers very specifically that the state really didn't like the idea of bringing.
Of narrowing that in, yeah.
Because they didn't think it would work.
No, they
Well,
just, in principle, they don't like that.
I think there was a concern in principle.
They think wider roads are safer, but evidence is that that's totally wrong.
So you do agree that they did not agree
They did-
utterly with it?
I don't know that they did not agree. If they did not agree, we wouldn't have built it because they wouldn't have given us $400,000 of federal money. I understand your concern about the beveled edge, and we thought, geez, as we watched these plans, we thought that's unusual, as did the builders who built it. But again, those plans, every page of those plans went through many state agencies, and they said that is
So
fine.
who do I send the bill to when I bring the tire?
It's a good question.
Well, I guess I need some demonstration that, that is any worse on a tire than,
I have
than a,
The pointed one. By the sidewalk. in
Yeah.
Mullins. There isn't a commercial tire that will stand
well,
that point.
yeah,
That needs to be shaved off.
Yeah, no.
and it was. and we'll do, and I think this is on the Pollins,
Isn't that
Paul,
up to date?
it's the Pollins side?
Pollins.
Yeah, we already had this discussion.
Oh, no, that's been shaved once, and,
We discussed it, getting it shaved
and I
again.
guess this is where I probably shouldn't even say it because of my position here, but we've already talked about one thing, you know, this is not the dream, this is not the beautifulest thing that we could ever build in our life, and we have problems. Now, with, and I've worked for both of you, so, I mean, I've been in the trucking industry for a long time. So, I understand your concerns, I definitely, I see that point, we had it cut once, we can certainly cut it again, the contractor didn't go any further. We haven't had a problem yet, truckers are going over it. The one, in the instance, we actually lowered the curve, so the truck mounting coming down from Kevin's would actually drive onto that.
Yep.
And I did that.
That's right.
Okay, so I made it better.
Then it has to come up where the drain is, so that the water goes into the,
Okay, so,
There's some other problems, but here's the point where I shouldn't say anything, but I will. Quantitative proof, keep your casings, there's another step to this that we're headed. And your concerns right now only help us on the other side. Okay, and you're a smart businessman, you can understand that, where I'm going with that. That's the only thing that can help prove to us, without us getting in a pissing match, that this is not the best that it could be.
well, I'm gonna go as far as to say that it wasn't ever meant to be the best that it could be just for trucks. There were other concerns. There was pedestrians, you know, it's a school where kids walk to school, there's no busing. And the general movement has been towards this traffic calming thing. The traffic that could slide right down that strip and start heading right down towards the library, way too fast, they have to stop now. It's more deliberate. It's hard, I absolutely agree that it's gonna be harder for trucks to do it, but I also believe that they can do it.
Mark, you want to comment on?
Well, I'd really like to comment because Art and I went down yesterday, and took a look at how the trucks are going around this corner. Now, it's been open for truck traffic with this design for 2 weeks, approximately. In 2 weeks, and you can walk out there tomorrow and take a look, it's a little dark tonight, you can see where the tire sides have been scuffed down, both sides of the curb in front of the bank. Now,
Somebody actually ran right up on the boat to see it down, it said the tire tracks right there.
and it's sinking in on the other side. Now, if that grass was removed and that was blacktopped so that there was only maybe like a 2 to 3 inch exposure to that curb, you probably could get around that corner without damaging the tires. Now, as a tire dealer, I probably shouldn't complain because I'm going to sell a ton of tires because of this intersection. It's impossible for Bob's trucks, Art's trucks, or the daily vehicles to go around this corner without wrecking tires. Now,
I'll need to see the proof of that. I mean, I think that was Norm's point. It may be the case, and if so, there are two issues. One is, and this is because all of your people are professional truck drivers, and they know how to drive a truck. I've seen them do it. But when you had an easy way of approaching something, one gets complacent. They had all the room in the world to go. And we, the village, a number of people in the village, were not happy with that football field of asphalt out there. And so we narrowed it in concept, and then in design, and then addressed issues about radiuses and turns. You show this truck, and I think, and I want you to show me otherwise, but I think that if a truck utilizes that rollover the way it's supposed to, which is hitting it here where there's absolutely zero, just before that drain drop inlet, where, as he said, he lowered it, it's completely flush, and comes across there, I'm not seeing any real tire scuffing.
You're looking at the wrong side of the road.
Your concern is the south side of the road?
Fallen side is the dangerous.
Okay, well, so we're getting somewhere here.
Now, could I address-
Well,
could I address the folks?
Please.
My name is Bob Erb. I own a trucking company down on the state lines. And I applaud the town's efforts in doing this project. Tremendous undertaking. I didn't care for the contractor and the way he did it. Cost me $1,100 in damage to one vehicle. And his attendant kept waving my guy on, was very impatient with the fact that we didn't want to come through. And cost us $1,100 worth of damage to the fuel tank air fairings on the side. But, you know, the outcome is you've got two liabilities here. Damage to our vehicles, but the second, which is my biggest concern, is the liability to the public. We call them four-wheelers. I had an example already where my driver came up from the yard, attempted to make the right-hand turn. Thank God he looked in the spot mirror on the side, because a little car pulled in on his right, and he stopped. He got out and he asked the gentleman to back up. You know what his response was? You back up.
Well, again,
Now, you know, had he not stopped, where would we be?
rude behavior is not something I can police here, for sure.
You know, I came through that intersection a week ago, 4 o'clock in the morning, heading north. And you know, I came to the conclusion right then, I'm 72 feet long. I figured it real quick, I have to take up 100% of this intersection to get through here. I thought to myself, what am I gonna do when the public doesn't wanna get out of my way? I mean, you know, we worry about a liability. We don't wanna hurt anybody, but we don't also wanna get into contests. Because we lose those. 3 years from now, when we get in a court case after hurting that guy and he was totally at fault, that's not the way it works out. Because a sympathetic jury says, oh, that big truck, they got big insurance policies, let's take care of that.
Are you willing to say that this intersection is the hardest intersection you navigate in all of your travels?
Yes, I would.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never
You
seen
know, the
anything
state-
Nothing like this.
I was down in Amherst, actually, my wife was down in Amherst, Mass, yesterday, and the entire town has this exact same design. I mean, so there are places
But
where.
can't you drive around Amherst without having to go on a major route? There's not a major route.
Well, I get that.
112 through
I get
Amherst is
that.
not like that.
I hear that part, and that's a problem. I mean, in that, and then there was the woman who came down to inspect the process. What was her name? Wendy or?
Adrian, I think.
And I don't know, her thing, she's the one who is the go-between, between the the transportation, whatever. Anyway, she's done 1 billion of these, not this design, but she's done many things like this, and her attitude is, we sat there for hours watching trucks, try to figure out what to do. It's new to them. It's new, and she said, and I take this for her word, that in 6 months, everybody will be a much better driver in that intersection. Everybody won't remember what it looked like before. And I think part of it is an education of, because you don't see a lot of these. The other one that I was familiar with is that crappy roundabout in Manchester that they did.
The first one.
That first one.
Yeah.
And that was done with.
For cars only.
Right. And it was just poorly, wrong kind of concrete, it's chipped, it looks like hell. We've been assured that this is gonna be better.
Well,
Time
I
to
think
tell.
Bob's comment was that when a truck goes to the intersection, you need 100% of the intersection. So the other flip of the coin is you're gonna need to light this with stoplights so that only trucks can go through that by themselves. You're gonna have a stop line somewheres past Pollins, by Kevin's and the rest to let the trucks make the corner.
What about a truck sitting and waiting for there to be no cars and then making the turn?
The problem with that is you can't see coming down from, especially coming from Kevin's to make that corner, where that car is.
There's one thing that I noticed the day they painted the lines that I would like to see different, and that was to back up that inner lane stop line quite a
It'll be
bit,
back.
which
About
would be
to the
helpful, which
church.
would be helpful. Well,
About to the church with a stoplight, because that's the only way you're gonna be able to see them.
well, again, the ultimate issue is this is state highway, and even though we take care of it, it is so much more complicated than us going out there and hanging a light
Yeah.
to make a change.
Can I ask what your intent is on Holton Lane or Holton Street, whatever it is?
Oh, right.
It's impossible for me to come from Bennington and go up Holton Street to my wine pile. It's also impossible for me to come down Holton Street and go to Bennington. It's absolutely impossible. You've got a 7-inch curb there
With your trucks.
with your truck. So was that your intent?
No. Well, again, this is a process, a 12-year process by committee.
This design came in before any of us were on. We're just kind of
The intent was to calm traffic on Houghton Street. It was to create no more, at some point, no more than the standard legal 2-car pass, such that, and I had people from the church complain that, what are we gonna do for church? And I asked them if their parking lot's always full, and they said it's never been full. How about use the parking lot then? So when that is a concern. I mean, can you go up to Depot and turn? At the post office, right here?
Not legally. That's my concern, is that I've got a telephone pole and a box that sells banners right on the corner. If I come out Depot Street and want to come up this way, I have to put my front wheel on the sidewalk in front of the post office so that the trailer clears that corner, that post, that telephone pole and the box.
Would the removal of the box help you at all?
That telephone pole, it's
Even harder, isn't it?
harder.
Art,
And you
I mean,
can't see traffic.
I appreciate the pictures and everything, but could you and I get together and walk through it real quick? And next, I mean, I can shoot you an email, we can get together. I'd actually like to walk through it with you from your perspective and look at this specifically, not the pictures, and say, well, this is problem A, problems. I want to identify what the problems are specifically, how many there are, and, see if we can fix anything.
North Bennington has a fantastic history, as everybody knows. It's a mill town. It was commerce. It was what built everything there. And I mean.
We found the trolley car rails
Exactly.
as we were
We used to
digging.
run a train right down the middle of the street for push ones and those places. But I'm just astonished that somebody is impeding commerce here. It really is making it hard to do business.
Route 67 is an east-west thoroughfare. You can't do without it. I mean, probably 50% of my equipment comes this way, all day long, at night as well. But, his point is, as far as being illegal, I'll tell you what, there is no way of going through that intersection and be legal in any direction. Everybody's got to get out of the way in order for us to do it. And that's sad, because someone's going to get hurt. That's my concern.
Short of tearing out a $500,000 project, what do you suggest? I mean, I think that we've tried to address some of the issues.
Can I interject a thought? The state of New York is into these roundabouts. We call them roundabouts. Cambridge has got one up by the Ford dealer up there. Well, you know what? Their roundabouts are totally tapered. There are no curbs, no pronounced curbs. When I go through that, I put my tractor as far over as I can, and the entire trailer's in the middle of the circle. The bottom line of it is here, the curbs are poorly designed.
Too sharp.
They're too sharp,
Too
they're
tall.
not rounded.
Way too tall.
And then the other thing that we have to worry about, and Mark can confirm this, is when you have tire damage to a tire by a curb like that, it might not show instantly. But we turn around, get out on the interstate, we start doing 50, 60 mile an hour, the tire heats up, next thing you know it blows. It's like, then we got a problem, then we got a real problem.
Explain to them what cords, they're steel belted cords, and
Sidewalls.
you break a cord in the sidewall.
A radial tire has got 14 plies on the tread itself.
Okay.
It's only got 2 to 4 on the sidewall.
That's what we tried to show, is that a 7-inch curve comes right in the middle of that.
It comes into the flex point of the tire. And in a radial tire, you see it on your own cars. It looks like, you know, well, is it aired up or not? Because it's got a bulge, just the way the tire is designed. But that's also the weak point in this tire is the bulge in the sidewall.
On the undercarriage part.
Any damage from that bulge towards the rim, it's junk. And it's junk at, Arch tires are $700 a pop.
And I'm just, because I don't know, but is there a means, in the same way that they did some grinding and took and affected those corners that were sharp, is there any sort of commercial way of
We could
beveling
certainly,
those?
we could, yeah, you know, and it might be a generator and a dust mask and a lot of hard backache. Can we round those corners? And this is, I'll tell you, Bob, and I'll tell Art, I'll meet you down there at 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll look at that pointy curve, we'll draw a line and we'll cut it tomorrow. You be there at 7, I'll cut it. You're not there, I ain't cutting.
I'm gonna be up north tomorrow.
Well, just get
I know one of
together.
you be there.
By the way, we have not signed off on this project.
No, but again,
mean, Jay-
and again, this is what I lead back to my point, help us validate your concerns. Okay, and we can't have this conversation at this point in time right here, okay? But if there's concerns that prove true, okay? Now, I know the driver that was in this truck, I know who it is, and I see it. You've got to use the mountain curves. And he can get a lot more in his lane if he uses it. Because that one picture is all on the outside. Granted, and I understand your concern, and I think that there's some validity to them. But just like our other issue, I don't think it's quite as bad as we're going after it. I think we can come to a happy medium. But I promise you, I'll meet you down there tomorrow, and we'll draw it, and we'll cut it and grind it.
It's right.
You aren't probably gonna like the way I want it cut, because I don't care how blunt it is, if it's 7 or 8 inches tall.
It's gotta be done
That's gonna ruin
3
the
inches.
tire.
Well, you're not gonna, we're not gonna be able to cut that, all right? I mean,
That's
the
But
problem.
it's gotta be.
we can make it more than that inch that you're gonna hit. You know, we can bring that whole thing back a little bit, you know. Again, get down there, we can meet there, and I'll bring my saw, and we will.
The curbs are just too high.
They're too tall.
Art, I had
Are the curves though?
it looks to me like he didn't even attempt to mount the curb.
Well, that you
Is
can
that-
get ones that have a radius, and
Because
that's
there's-
everybody.
He said it doesn't matter if you grind.
No,
it.
he's talking about.
Yeah, I think it needs more
It's over
observation.
here.
Do it really specifically. Yeah, this is this section, it doesn't work, you know.
Right, Art has talking, and he's
He also talked about
he's
curves
talking
being too
about
high.
and showing pictures
Well, they're
of
not
one
supposed to
side of the
They
intersection.
don't have to.
And Bob is talking about
Right.
another.
Right,
This
I
is the
understand
point
that.
that.
But I'm just trying to sort out how much
Not
might
just the
be,
point
I get
itself.
that.
And if you flip this back.
Yeah, you're talking about all the curves are too high.
If you flip this back,
Even, like,
Well, no,
even
see,
the,
now I'm
these
gonna go
curves.
back and fall on the state regulations of radius, because that's all I can come to,
well,
is
that's
that
just
they
the
looked
radius,
at
but
it
if you
and
look
they
at this
approved
past
it.
the bank here.
But if you just look at mountable curbs, most of them are put on an angle.
I know
Roll
that,
on here,
believe
over
me,
that
and the
curve,
state
it was
approved
in
the
grass
drawings,
over here,
and
but
it
with
took
the two
years
tires running each
of
side.
I get you.
3 iterations, and the day that they
But
started
is that
doing
because he
this,
can't make this turn or
the
because that's what
contractor
happens?
was like, wow,
There probably was a
They're not
car on the
specifying,
left-hand side, and he gave him a
beveled
little bit of
curve.
room.
And I
If you give him
said-
a little room with that tractor,
I
it's
said,
gonna bring
that
that
kinda sucks, is
trailer
there
more-
any
more
way we
to
can
the
change
road.
that?
So,
The,
you can take a look
I
by
can't
yourself
imagine.
tomorrow.
Oh, sure, but you know, my eyes aren't looking at the truck driver's eyes though. So again, I'm not gonna know what I
Just go
see.
take a look at
Sure.
the marks on the curbs right now.
I think one of the things
But
I want to bring
that,
up too.
marks
is
on the curb
You were
could be
talking,
for two reasons. Could be because it's not able to be driven, or it could be because the guy who drove was a horrible driver and put marks on the
Car on
curb.
each side of the curb driving down the grass, and you can see where they're on the grass going down through.
Again, but I need somebody there to tell me what happened on
I
that.
think it takes a lot, you got to observe what's going on. I
Sure.
sat out there the other day and I was watching, one of our trucks was coming in from the west, and fortunately, it was it was our boom truck, and a tanker was coming down in front of Kevin's to take the turn to go out to the west, And when he came down, fortunately, our driver, I was sitting out there and I was wondering why he stopped. I saw the tanker coming and I saw our driver stopped because he could look through the backside of the bank and he could see the tanker coming. So he stopped up past Paulins' driveway to allow that tanker to make that move. The other thing I saw there as well is that when you're talking safety, pedestrians are using the nice brick section as a walkway. So there's more walkway there that they're taking advantage of as well.
But they were also using the blacktop, which was road.
And that's even worse, of course.
At the bank.
Yeah.
When it was that big no parking spot at the bank. It was the same thing. Pedestrians had a lot further to go. We're trying to figure out ways that we can at least make this better. I can't answer why. I still believe, because the state has said that it's possible, that a trained truck driver who slows down, and again, it's part of that learning curve, like it used to be able to fly through here, and starts to learn their points of where they gotta be. And now, the south one, I've gotta take a look at more, but the north one, at the bank, I just can guarantee that if one mounts here, and by the way, that's 0 elevation right there. No, sorry.
Something you want to look at there too in that last picture? Here. Look at that. The far end of the bank, when the truck makes that corner and goes up in that mountable curve right there, and he comes up to that next little jaunt out right there, yep.
Here?
He has to go over to move for his tires to miss that curve.
Well,
He's got to go into the other lane to get out the swing and make sure his tandem is coming back in his, without hitting.
I see a truck that's doing that turn fine there.
Yes.
But you don't know where his front end was.
Right.
No,
That's right, because that is why he made the corner wide down here. This is why he did not go on the multiple curb.
because otherwise it's up here that he's having to go across.
Otherwise, he would have hit right there, which is a 7-inch curve right there.
Out of all of them, that's to me,
the
is
worst
one of the
one.
toughest ones.
That's the toughest one.
That's one of the tougher ones.
After what we actually see as the intersection is where it gets actually more
Gets tougher.
difficult.
That narrows down in there, and that jumps out there pretty good, and that front end of that truck, I'm guaranteeing, is halfway over in the other lane, to keep his tandems
You can
on
see
that
by,
off that
if you go back, you can see by where his front wheel is there. If it's as equally wide here, he's gotta be over the line some anyway.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
but that may be the same.
I remember, I was involved in this project kind of going way back, so, I hear what these folks are saying, and I think that we definitely need to look at this issue about the damage to the tires. I think that the issue of the safety and the encroaching on the oncoming lane is a little bit more complicated. I mean, the safety issue was what a lot of this project was about in the first place, because vehicles just moved so fast through that intersection, didn't have good sight distances, there was all sorts of confusion because there were, you could cut into parking lots at every which different angle. So the whole idea of this thing was to really define the intersection and make it a straighter, cleaner intersection, and also to make it an intersection that was much more in keeping with a village center, which is what it is, notwithstanding the fact that it's also, a state highway that goes through that accommodates quite a bit of truck traffic. So it was a compromise in the design all along, in trying to create an intersection that's more like a village, create an intersection that's safer for people, and at the same time still be able to accommodate the commercial traffic that goes through here. The designs were intended to try to allow the trucks to make the curves, turns as well as possible, going over those nominal curve sections for their trailers. But I pretty clearly remember that there was always an acknowledgement that certain turning movements, the trucks were going to encroach in the oncoming lane. And the state did not have a problem with that. I mean, that happens all of the time. In village centers everywhere.
Happens at this intersection.
Right, you have to
When I was up in, working in Arlington, at the corner of East Arlington Road and Route 7A, trucks going up to Mac Molden probably 20 times a day when they're on that corner. And they always encroached in the oncoming lane, and people just stopped 15 or 20 times a day and let that happen. And the thing is that it was a very low-speed intersection, which is what this one is intended to be. so that that's relatively easy for people to let that happen. So if a truck's coming around the corner and you stop and you wait for it to get room to get around the corner. I mean, it's unfortunate maybe that it's a state highway in the center of the village, but it's both of those things.
Needs
So
to serve both.
The design tries to recognize the fact that it's both of those things.
And I think that's a good point, that any two-lane, four-way intersection, like this one up here, 4 stops, it's impossible to make that turn as well without, so really really any turn in any intersection that isn't super wide or more of a circle than a square, trucks are gonna go into that other lane. I'll go up here and pull up by the house to that sign. Here comes a truck. Could be Whitman's, could be whatever. Uh-oh, back up because he's gonna take my front end out. That's just a perfect example of a normal intersection. I mean, normal, again, in a village.
Well, it seems that it was easy to get around it before, so would a simple 15-mile-an-hour speed limit sign slow the trucks down to the point where they could have made it without spending $500,000?
Well, we can,
It's not just the trucks, Mark, and you know what, and if we could train most of our four-wheelers, as we'll call them, because I deal with them all the time, I got a 11-foot plow, and I don't even know how we're gonna get around this thing, okay, so I got issues, and I deal with this all day, okay, and from multiple angles, okay? You know, I've watched numerous cars, and I've watched trucks, we were in there one day, and it wasn't one of you guys, it was a milk hauler. Guy come from 67, there had to be 15 trucks sitting there, a cement mixer was pouring one of the curves, and the guy blew that intersection, it was always a yield sign, didn't care, blew that intersection, and went right through it. I've seen probably 50 cars do it. And I see people now, they drive up the street and they cut it. And they come to me and they complain, and I say, let's go back. And I've actually drove down, and I stood in the road and say, now drive around me at the speed that's posted, and a car can drive around. Now, unfortunately, until all the car traffic decides to get their head out of their rear end to let the trucks go out through, you know, we as an industry, which I am part of, are gonna fight this problem, okay? And hopefully, one of the reasons some of this curbing was done was for that. Now again, we'll go back to our curbing. Help us help you, and that's the last I can say about it. And if you don't, we'll never get anywhere. And we can move forward and pass this thing, but it is gonna be more than just the first 2 weeks to reprogram everybody that goes through that, and ourselves
you will all
included.
get better at going through there, and so will the cars.
No, I'm really concerned about Holden Street. There's no way that I can use that. I mean, is that what you want? Is that your intent? Okay.
I certainly do not want you to not be able to go down Houghton Street.
Okay. So,
I guess if I'm thinking about roads to get to your business, I wish there was another one, less residential and less, but there isn't, I guess, unless you go to your place and then go through, right? You've got passages through to the other side of the tracks, do you not? This is it.
When they drew that out, and it's not gonna mean anything, but when they drew that out on the ground and finally where they were gonna cut the blacktop, and it was like, oh my God. I tried with Nancy Avery to flip that. So to do just take exactly what we have and go like this, and that was met with not even a consideration.
And
that would have made it a lot easier for us to plow through, you know, just put the two car parking on Eddington side and just square that intersection up. And it just, you know, once you get, this was 5 years ago into this project, there's no turning back. And I know you don't want to hear this one, but it cost us more money to quit and leave it the way it was than it was what we have here.
I don't know if you understand that part of this whole process too, but there's a lot of levels to this whole issue, and many of it we're not very happy about. That was something too. I was there that day, figuring it out. I was like, what the hell, you know? And once again, maybe in time, something like that can get addressed, changed, but right now, we're stinging from the, from the cost, the poor engineering. I don't mean like just bad idea engineering, I mean engineering that wasn't right on the map.
Okay, well,
And so, but I will also say that every time that we had a plan that was the next level or whatever, the final plan, there were public meetings, and that blueprint was there. Now, I know, we all don't really, but I don't know how else to,
I kept telling myself, because the state engineered it, it's going to be okay. And
I'm still there, I'm still at that point.
I just can't believe that we can't do it safely and legally.
Well, I think that you truckers, business, and four-wheelers are gonna get a lot better at most of that. And we can help with the bevels, maybe the grinding those things for an approach on that, deal with that other thing to the degree that we can. Houghton's gonna be hard not to crack.
You know, in New York State, when they do these roundabouts and whatnot, they set a parameter or a perimeter for the traffic to flow. And if the traffic gets out of line, there is no 7-inch curb to penalize them. You know what I mean? They might.
But those curbs are there though for pedestrian safety though. Those curbs are there for pedestrian safety. We don't want anybody driving up there because there's a sidewalk on the other side.
If there's somebody walking there and you're about to hit that, I'd rather you bust your wheel than kill the person.
And on those roundabouts, you don't have sidewalks going around those. I mean, there's a clear reason why the curbs are that high. I'm not saying that they aren't in your way,
Again, what do you
but the
do?
reason the curbs are there is so we don't drive on
When
them.
a truck goes around that corner and blows the tire and the pedestrian's standing on the sidewalk.
154,000-pound beam falls out. What do you think about that?
Let's not even think about that.
It's my tires underside it.
I appreciate you coming, and let's,
I felt we had to say, we had to come to you, okay?
Art, I appreciate that, and I think
Yeah.
there's no one better than
And
Norm
obviously,
to
the more you
help.
can tell us
I think
about
to
it too,
work
and the more we, I mean,
you on
obviously,
this,
we'll do anything we can
and We'll
do.
do what we can.
Okay, thank you.
You know,
Keep watching and then maybe.
the approach on the bank side, I think is livable. I think the other side of the road hasn't even been attempted to do anything with yet.
The gas station
Something's
corner?
gotta happen, the gas station side.
Well,
That's a
let's all
horrendous
get
problem.
together and everybody in their trucks one day, and we'll take a look.
Okay.
Get somebody from the state down. I mean, I'm not saying, find out, have somebody rationalize to you how that's supposed to work.
Okay.
I'm not the one, I'm not a highway expert or a trucker, so,
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
I'll come to the store and pick you up.
Is it too,
If you want to continue this conversation
we could,
We've got more comments. We need to figure out the legal project, how
We
much the
gotta-
water department's gonna pay.
that's why, I mean, that part, I guess, is just, it is what it is, and we have to figure that out, but you wouldn't have to be here for that discussion.
I want to say my problem.
I'm sorry.
You guys are warmed up.
Also, I have been in the truck business, you know, hard to believe, but when I was younger, I was in the truck.
Excuse me.
So it's very interesting, I didn't know this would be such an interesting evening. I reside on 31 Mechanic Street, and I have a small problem with the water. Quite a bit of water, it's increasing all the time. And my neighbor really doesn't like the water going because it comes from my property and goes over to his. And he has an ice rink, and so do I, all my It is on the east side of the property, and there is some kind of a drainage ditch that comes from the college road down. But it doesn't seem to be very effective, and I was wondering whether there would be any remedy to help out with this situation.
Well, my observation in the 20 years that I've been here is that there's a lot of groundwater there, and it comes off under compression from the hill of the college. And anybody, I don't know about your basement, but most basements on that property are rivers running through them. The Taub's house is,
But it isn't really that's bothering.
it's just how it's freezing in places, and it's just not continuing to
Well,
move.
it's not not moving right. It's sort of, the culvert's up on our College Road, and it goes right to somebody's yard. And then there's the woods section, which it sort of lands there. Then you got Wilmington's property where the water just all settles in right in Wilmington's. And there's supposedly
There's a culvert there.
culvert. And then in the woods, it comes down the woods, and then it goes between Bertha, our neighbor, and then our property. Right there, we now have a ditch this water, and this summer we had absolute a river coming down to try to get to the culvert that ends at Mechanic Street, which there is also a manhole that comes up high like this and over to the left where the water coming down from Overlay Road here doesn't even hit the manhole, go into the water thing there. It's just nothing's connecting to hit the spots.
We've tried to do some minor fixes on some of that drainage. There was a time when that water all ended up on North Street down by the access fishing road. And it kept piling up so that the person in the trailer there had ice this thick because it would stood. And
Something's changed.
Well, I'm wondering if there isn't somebody off property that's diverted water.
We redug from that point of College to the forge to go down to the culvert because it's not.
We always had water.
But
I know your water level up there.
Yeah.
I've walked it and gone up through it,
Yeah.
but not.
Okay.
This, and you go back, Matt, a couple of things, like you're talking about the ice, for the first time ever, and I mean, I've only been there 5 years, but I had, no lie, that started in their property.
It's refreezing.
Made it down my driveway, past the barn.
Yeah.
And then also, too, is this summer, 4 years ago, we had the rain, where it was more rain than we've ever had in the summer by like July. Blew away what we had this year. I've had so much water in my basement, plowing through my garden, and now it kind of.
Well, aside from this, let me just explain to you when it becomes, as I understand it, becomes our issue. It becomes our issue if we've done something up on College Road that would change maybe how the water comes. And then it's our issue when it gets back out on the road on Mechanic Street again. The issue of a neighbor behind you, a different property owner changing the way they direct their water, we have no control over. But we don't want ice on the road. We don't want, it's not that we don't care about the ice on your driveway. We would love to keep the water going to where it's supposed to go. Now, we are in the very early processes of creating probably a sidewalk and some sort of curb all the way up your side of the road.
Yes, you do. You just don't see it.
Yeah, I know. It's there.
No, it's not. And actually, in the 50s, it was an oil and stone
Turning into ice all over the
sidewalk.
The whole sidewalk that's in front of our property. That's all stemming from.
But it's coming off from the to the direction of the culvert. It's coming off into the air, up over the sidewalk area, down
Just
the
coming
street,
from the
like-
road into your property? Or
No.
coming from behind?
Behind.
From the wherever, up there from
Mhm.
behind Wilmington's and the College, the one coming culvert going into the backyard of the other maybe there. And going down. It's not
Has anything
flowing
happened up on
to
the
culvert.
College
It's
property?
flowing
That's
We have to look at it.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's-
just to
can-
take a little
There's
side
nothing
step.
that can be
Well,
done. It's
you know what,
fine.
and we spoke the other day, we actually got preview of the big tanks here before everybody else, and we spoke, and I walked up there the other day when it was raining. And you'd be amazed at what water comes out of that culvert, it's basically nothing. I know you're.
Oh, over there.
Oh, like that,
Yeah, really?
it's not, there's hardly, the college has a stone wall, the
Okay.
way the road is, and that road is broken up with a million holes in it.
Yeah. Okay.
The water that you're experiencing, whether you wanna.
Is it
like or not,
groundwater?
It's well, it's not groundwater, it's coming from the sky, but it's laying on the ground, it's not directed from that culvert.
Okay.
Now, that culvert was put in one time for a reason.
Yeah.
There was a ditch dug for a reason. I totally agree with you on both of those two things. One, we never remove culverts and take them out, because that's just a bad thing, okay? Especially for, big years where we have lots of rain. Could that property be reditched? Yes. and I believe it needs to be
It
re-ditched.
needs to be.
And then, there's a hole, you see, we put stakes in, so we
Yeah,
know where they
right,
are.
right.
And we do that for a reason, so when the water comes over abundance, we can chop into that and find it or throw salt on it, so the water will go. Now, I've been on the job 5 years, and we haven't ditched it since then because it's private property. That's on your,
Okay, I
That's
didn't know
on your
that.
property.
Someone tells us it is, and someone tells us it
well,
isn't.
no, that's.
And I've measured and it doesn't seem to be.
Within, and again, this is a whole other battle, but there's a difference between what right of way, okay, what I have the authority that I can go on and work, and what you own, okay? And they're usually like this is yours, and this is where I can do whatever within reason, whatever I find needs to be done. But that ditch needs to be dug, needs to connect that culvert, right? We're all in agreement with that. But how that gets done, we probably will never come to an agreement with that. Maybe we will, I don't know. Because that's trucks backing on into your yards, putting ruts.
Norm,
That's
will you
a big
just,
deal.
will you take me up there and show me what
Yes, I will.
you've seen, and if you've met with him there already, or would you like to?
Just-
Okay.
Just a
Just
conversation.
casual, it was a casual.
Let's-
It was a tag sale.
Now, I'd like to know.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious to know
The Eric.
who's lived there the longest.
Pardon?
Who's lived at that residence the longest?
You've lived there 10, but Bertha, the White House.
Well, just right here, so you're saying 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay, have you seen that ditched in 10 years?
No.
Right?
no,
So,
no.
a ditch, okay, and you'll see us on Park Street, whether people want to believe it or not, but, they need to be maintained. Leaves fall, grass grows in, they get thicker, and they need to be maintained, and if you want to keep water off your property, you need to maintain your ditch
Right,
that's taking that water.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, because it's the center of our property, the back, the ditch is probably this deep now.
Right.
Because of this past winter, the water, or the summer, we had water like that. And then as you go down, it's getting stuck because there's this,
That's
and then
it,
there's
yeah,
that, and
that's
then,
right.
yeah.
Let's take a look at that.
Yeah.
It's hard to visualize.
Well, thank you, yeah. that's-
Thanks, and we'll keep at us. We have been working on some of the drainage issues there, and like I said, there's a very large grant that although I'm a little grant shy these days, but to put a sidewalk up through there again for a good pedestrian.
Right, and there's that little piece next to your house that, I don't know, I think the bushes just got cut, but it's like a piece of marble and.
Oh, yeah, there used to be marble, that whole road was probably
well,
marble.
that piece, that piece that's borrowed that we got into this year, that culvert has failed.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that is
Everything
on
goes there.
Mechanic Street,
Okay, right,
and
right.
you,
Right,
as taxpayers, need to pray that that doesn't cave in this winter.
okay.
Because we can't change it right now, okay? The culvert's full, that was when they talked earlier, when they talked about that Hardigan truck, and I don't know if you saw me around with that big truck.
Yeah.
And we've sucked all those, okay? We called this,
Oh, that was fun. Yeah.
we called this the year of the culvert, and you've seen me down the street making water, okay? I know where everything on that street works, and every one of them works except for that one. And that one hasn't took water in years.
Okay, all right, let's have that discussion out on the street over coffees. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
I think our Whitman alerted.
We got to make a decision here, and unfortunately, I brought Steve here, Jim here. The thought was that we were going to have a discussion about the intersection monies and how we're going to deal with that and all that. But we do have other things on the agenda. Are there other things of importance? Or do we try to reschedule this between you and Gail and Jim and us? But it would have to be pretty darn soon.
Well, I had one quick request.
Yeah.
Gail and I, actually. And that was, you may have recalled a couple of emails about the financial policy. And Gail came up with what I think is a good recommendation to get some consultation on how that policy fits in with,
You said you were going to contact,
Steve, I was just
Steve.
waiting for the okay.
oh, I'm
this would be
sorry.
a formal consultation. I mean, so,
Right.
Okay.
about that. Because, and it seems to make a lot of sense to find out before we
Sure.
go into an
All
audit,
right.
whether the policy
I think we
really
can
is
authorize
adequate
that.
or we need to do some more tweaking to it.
Before we go any further, I am going to, either we do this now, or we do it, what's your schedule's like later this week? I have a meeting tomorrow night.
Now meaning going to executive?
About doing that, and whether we should do that as a separate meeting. Or are we here
I
till
think
11?
we leave it up to them, seeing as how they've already come out tonight. I mean,
When are you talking about?
We,
Next
about
week sometime?
No, well, we're talking about whether to do this right now, tonight, or,
I'm in-
do you have have you received any further?
Yeah, I have.
You-
Just about 7 o'clock tonight, I got some more information from Matt Lakeman.
Okay. Why don't we try to quickly at least get part of this, part done? And I would ask for a motion to go into executive, and the reason is because this discussion, and I think this is appropriate, but
It's
everything
legal
we
issues.
talk about are
There's
gonna be
legal
dealing
issues
with some legal issues later, and I think that's the way we should handle it. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we move into executive session for legal matters.
Second.
Second?
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we do have a few other items that, if it doesn't get too long, we'll try to come back on, if that's okay with you? Okay. Please. No.
No, thanks a lot, Jim.
No, but while the camera's back on, I want to say that we do appreciate you.
Yeah, how much I cost the village on this project.
I think Jim Sharp's the one that cost us.
We're back on that.
Okay.
We on?
Yep.
Okay.
Jim.
Do we have to vote out of executive?
Yeah, we have to go out.
So,
Make,
somebody make a motion
I
to,
make a motion that we come out of the executive session.
Second.
all's in favor?
aye.
Aye. Okay, just some final things, just to finish up our agenda here. Highway facilities, Norm, do you want to talk about anything tonight, or?
Yeah, we have roads, drive on them.
Okay, cool.
And try to make the corner.
Yeah, leaf sucking is over. It's been over for a week now, and they're still putting leaves on the street. The boxes on the truck, it'll probably pick up with one last pile tomorrow. That's it.
That's legit.
I don't wanna
You put-
hear more crying.
They'll have to put the rest in bags.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, there's other, I don't know how many realize that, but the work that Norman's been doing on Park Street, and that was done through a Better Back Roads grant, and that's one that did come out right. We got, actually, Norm made us a couple $100 on that, so.
You
we'll-
did?
we'll-
You
We'll
didn't
be
know
getting
that?
the,
We know where that's going.
no, the whole project cost,
That was a lot of work, too, with the rock.
Oh, yeah.
And the,
we got a $10,000 grant, and that was, we had to have a 20% match, but the match could be in Norm's time, you know,
in kind.
everybody's time. The truck, how much you charge them, like $50 an hour for the trucks that were up there, and
Yep.
so we were able to more than match what we had spent, so actually,
That was
the
good.
state's gonna be paying Norm a little bit for his work there. And all the materials are basically free. So those are
Thank you, Norm.
good, so,
That's good networking. It really, I also want to.
and they were very impressed. Norm, they said, did the best job of anybody in the state on this.
Right. I want to thank Norm for his oversight here and following along on a daily basis with what was going on, calling me if there was an issue that he needed an answer for, and somebody had to say, okay, don't worry about the footprint and the concrete or whatever, but noticing the problems with the granite that needed to get cut, noticing where we should drop that rollover all the way down. I think some of the people who are concerned about this need to understand that with his help and a lot of other people, we were able to make it the best project that we could, and I will say I've heard from a lot of people, and they're probably not truckers, but they love it. So, in a way, we've got to try to satisfy everybody and try to work at maybe figuring out how we can do the best we can with the truck people.
I do have a question, and I'm not as familiar with this details down there, but is it clear to pedestrians where they should be standing while waiting for traffic to go by? Because there's that additional
Right.
ramp out there.
It's as clear as it possibly can.
Right.
If people can't figure it out, then they really shouldn't be walking alone by themselves.
That's why they, because
Because I have to leave it at that. You
No.
know, we cannot put a safeguard for every situation possible.
I think the problem comes,
Being in a
though,
bubble,
yeah, I think the problem comes is just, it becomes a gray area for some people, because if you go into town of Bennington, the sidewalks are actually red brick. So I think for some people, when they see the red brick,
Right.
they think it's just for aesthetics to have a better looking sidewalk. So it's gonna be.
And I worry about kids,
Right,
too.
it's gonna be, for some people, it is gonna be a little fuzzy, a little gray, because they just don't know what they're looking at.
and if motors abide by traffic laws and a pedestrian is in the crosswalk,
They're gonna stop anyway, yeah.
And again, it's a big chain of bad habits that we all have.
Mhm.
And we're never gonna fix it, so that's not even worth trying. You know, our ADA grade is correct, our width is correct, we have our bump outs everywhere we have pedestrian refuge, what they call them, that's why those bulb outs are at. Other than that, we can't do it anymore, so.
The area is inherently safer just because of the speed of cars. But yeah, it's weird the way.
I walked to the post office on that side of the street for the first time since I lived here, because now you can cross.
You can get across, yeah. Okay, fire department, or development review board, they had a little bit of a meeting regarding an application for a change in whatever with Ron Nadu. And that's all I know about that. Fire department, anybody? I'll thank them for their annual Halloween help with the trucks and the parade. Amazing how many people showed up in the rain.
Yeah.
They don't stop them. Water board, I do not know.
We should probably acknowledge their help with the project.
Acknowledge that Steve met with us tonight, and because of the added necessity of a major water system upgrade in the intersection while this project was being done, they have stepped up and contributed significantly to this project, and at a time when that was something they didn't anticipate having to do, again, because of some engineering snafus. So thank you very much for that. New business? Too late for new business. Is it too late for old business?
Just the quick, I'll touch base with Norm sometime just to go over some numbers on park and rec money, just what we spent, so I can figure out what we can help out with the dam. In that, I don't know, obviously, what was it, $10,000 is roughly our end?
Yeah.
So we'll apply it.
Shoot it.
Well, I don't know what's in there, so I gotta find out what's in there before I can say we can give any amount of money, and,
Yeah, I mean, we don't tap into that a whole lot.
Good.
okay.
Well, let's just
So
get that
I'll
figured
sit
out.
and talk to you, and,
It's so Gail knows.
It'll take a
where to-
minute, yeah.
Where to pull the money from. It's, again, the dam project's another one that, out of our hands, kind of. It was something we knew needed to be done, didn't know exactly when it would be done, didn't know exactly how much it was gonna cost in the end.
I read that damn bill, and we were very fortunate on that. That's all I'm gonna say on that. But we could have been held a lot closer to the flame on that.
Yeah.
well, you know what, hearing
Well,
a
the first
ten,
bill was wrong, you know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. we're in
hearing
it
a
for 10.
$10,000 price tag when earlier we were told just to get a study done was north of 25.
25 for a study,
So obviously we did,
$200 for dynamite.
we did pretty well, yeah. Yeah.
I'll just mention under old business that the Charter Review Committee is meeting, and we're meeting weekly at this point. to try to move things along a little faster.
And I think you still would like a time where we all would do a working session with that, or you wanted to identify some other people who might be helpful in the community with.
Well, if there are other people in the community, that would be helpful, I think. And I'm anticipating we'd want to do a work session with the rest of the trustees or other people as well, but I don't think we're quite there yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. We're getting there, though.
Yeah.
Making headway. We're making noticeable progress, which is really nice.
Very nice. Well, thanks for doing that. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.